Why aren't you scared, human? Commander Thrax adjusted his ceremonial battle armor as he gazed out the viewport of the Hegemony flagship Inevitable Dominance. Earth hung in the distance as swirling blue marble, utterly unremarkable save for one thing: it was still unconquered. Not for long, though. Not for long. Status report, Thrax barked, his four-fingered hand drumming impatiently against the command console. Lieutenant Krell snapped to attention. Sir. 37 warships in formation. Weapons systems at full capacity. Planetary defense analysis complete. Their technology is, frankly, laughable. Or, as expected. Thrax's mouth slits curled into what passed for a smile among the Voraxian elite. Show me their most advanced weapons again. The holographic display flickered to life, showcasing primitive nuclear missiles and rudimentary laser satellites. Thrax couldn't help but chuckle, a guttural, clicking sound that caused junior officers to flinch. They shoot exploding metal at each other. And they think radio waves are advanced communication. How adorably prehistoric. Thrax spun dramatically, his cape billowing behind him. Species number 38 for the glorious hegemony. Hardly worth the fuel we spent getting here. Strategic Officer Maz cleared her throat. Sir, protocol dictates we offer surrender terms before. Yes, the formalities. Thrax waved dismissively. Send the diplomatic corps. Tell these humans they have one planetary rotation to submit before we demonstrate our hospitality. As the officers rushed to carry out his orders, Thrax helped himself to a celebratory glass of fermented Zentari nectar. The liquid glowed purple in the ship's artificial lighting. To Earth, he toasted to no one in particular. Soon to be nothing more than another footnote in the grand history of the Galactic Hegemony. Little did Commander Thrax know, footnotes sometimes contain the most important information of all. The diplomatic shuttle returned to the Inevitable Dominance 6 hours later, exactly on schedule, which was the only normal thing about its return. Commander Thrax waited impatiently in the docking bay, expecting to see the usual post-surrender procession, captured native dignitaries, signed treaties, and the smugly satisfied expressions of his diplomatic corps. Instead, his elite team stumbled out looking like they'd witnessed a supernova up close. Chief Diplomat Nilia, normally the most composed being in 12 star systems, was visibly trembling, all 6 of her arms hugged tightly against her thorax. What happened? Thrax demanded, mandibles clicking with irritation. Where are the human representatives? The surrender documents? Nilia's compound eyes darted nervously around the docking bay. Sir, we met with only one human, their designated negotiator. One? They sent one representative to meet the might of the hegemony? Thrax bellowed, causing nearby maintenance droids to scatter for cover. They said he was sufficient, Nilia whispered. His name is Jack Porter. And we delivered your ultimatum exactly as instructed. We displayed the holographic demonstration of planetary bombardment. We showed the historical records of the 37 species who tried to resist. Nilia paused, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with anxiety. Continue, Thrax growled. He laughed, sir. The command deck fell silent. Even the ship's ventilation systems seemed to hold their breath. Clarify, Thrax said, his voice dangerously quiet. The human porter, he watched our entire presentation, and then he just started laughing. Not nervous laughter. He was genuinely amused. Nilia's voice cracked. When we showed him the annihilation of the Krellian homeworld, he was sipping a beverage he called coffee and said, and I quote, cute light show. Got anything else? Security Officer Vox, who had accompanied the diplomatic team, stepped forward. Sir, it gets worse. When we threatened immediate devastation if they didn't comply, Porter smiled and said, Look, folks, I've got a lunch meeting in 20 minutes. Why don't you go back to your boss and tell him if he wants to make threats, he should deliver them personally. Thrax's exoskeleton practically vibrated with rage. He dismissed you. A grade 9 diplomatic delegation of the Galactic Hegemony? Like we were door-to-door salespeople, Nilia confirmed miserably. Thrax paced the deck, his ceremonial armor clanking with each furious step. This was unprecedented, inconceivable. In 3 centuries of conquest, no species had ever laughed at the hegemony's might. "Prepare my personal shuttle," Thrax finally announced. "I will meet this Jack Porter myself." Lieutenant Krell stepped forward nervously. "Sir, protocol strongly advises against command-level officers entering potentially hostile." "Protocol?" Thrax whirled around. Was it protocol for our diplomatic corps to return humiliated? Is it protocol to be laughed at? No, sir, but... Enough. This human has insulted the hegemony. Before I reduce his world to molten slag, I want to look into his eyes and watch his pitiful bravado turn to terror. Thrax straightened his armor. Sometimes, Lieutenant, fear must be personally administered. The neutral meeting point, an ancient trading station orbiting Earth's moon, was Thrax's suggestion. He wanted neutral ground but close enough to Earth that this Jack Porter could watch as the hegemony fleet positioned itself for the first wave of planetary bombardment. A psychological tactic that had broken the will of countless species before. Thrax arrived with an entourage of 12 elite guards, each standing 3 meters tall with exoskeletons engineered to intimidate on a primal level. Serrated limbs, and venom sacs visibly pulsing at their jawlines, armor made from the bones of conquered species. Thrax himself cut an imposing figure, his ceremonial battlesuit adding half a meter to his already considerable height, shoulder spikes extending outward like solar flares, and a translucent section in his chest plate, revealing his 3 hearts beating in perfect synchronization. The human arrived alone. Jack Porter walked into the station's central chamber with the casual gait of someone entering a neighborhood cafe. Average height, average build, unremarkable brown hair. He wore what appeared to be standard Earth business attire, a simple blue suit with a red tie, and carried nothing but a small metal container. "Coffee?" Jack offered, holding up the container. "I brought extra. Figured first contact might run long." Thrax bristled at the informality. "You stand before Commander Thrax, supreme military authority of the Galactic Hegemony, conqueror of 37 civilizations, and harbinger of..." "Yeah, I got the resume from your team yesterday," Jack interrupted, pouring steaming liquid into a cup. "Impressive stuff. Though I've got to say, harbinger of inevitable submission sounds like a rejected heavy metal band name." The guards shifted uncomfortably. No one interrupted the commander. Ever. Thrax's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You find this amusing, human? Your civilization stands on the brink of extinction, and you make jokes?" Jack took a sip of coffee, winced, and added something from a small packet. Bitter. "Anyway, extinction? That seems excessive for a first date." Thrax slammed his armored fist on the table between them, leaving a sizable dent in the metal. "Enough. Your diplomatic representative has failed. Your planet has no meaningful defenses. Your technology is primitive. Your options are simple: immediate surrender or immediate annihilation." For dramatic effect, Thrax pressed a control on his gauntlet. Behind him, a holographic display showed the hegemony fleet moving into attack formation around Earth. Jack leaned forward slightly, examining the display with what appeared to be mild curiosity. "HM. 37 ships, right? Neat formation. 37 invincible warships, each capable of rendering a continent uninhabitable," Thrax corrected, voice dripping with menace. "Your species will be remembered only as a warning to others who defy the hegemony." "You know what's weird?" Jack said, completely ignoring the threat. "I had this exact conversation in a dream once, except instead of aliens, it was my high school math teacher. She was not impressed with my calculus homework either." One of the guards accidentally let out a confused chirp before quickly snapping back to attention. Thrax felt something unfamiliar creeping along his spine, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his larval days. Was it uncertainty? This human should be begging, threatening uselessly, or at minimum showing appropriate terror. Instead, he was making nonsensical comparisons to education rituals. Perhaps, Thrax said, leaning his massive frame forward until his face was centimeters from Jack's, "You fail to comprehend your situation. Allow me to be more direct." He activated another hologram showing recordings of previous conquests, planets cracking under bombardment, civilizations falling, species being processed into the hegemony hierarchy. Jack watched politely, occasionally nodding. When the graphic demonstration ended, he glanced at his wrist device. "Is that the whole presentation? Not even a QA section. My corporate training sessions have higher production values." Thrax's third heart began beating out of sync with the others, a physiological response to extreme stress that hadn't happened since his first command. Enough. Thrax roared, his patience finally evaporating like water on a plasma engine. The room temperature dropped several degrees as his anger regulation glands released cooling agents into his bloodstream, a biological necessity to prevent Voraxian rage from cooking them from the inside. "Why aren't you scared, human? What deficiency in your primitive brain prevents you from comprehending your imminent extinction?" Jack Porter set down his coffee cup with a gentle click, and finally his expression changed. The casual smile faded, replaced by something more measured, more deliberate. "You know what's funny about being primitive, Commander?" Jack leaned back in his chair. "Nobody expects much from you. It's actually quite liberating." "Answer the question." Thrax slammed both fists down, shattering the table between them. His guards instinctively raised their weapons. Jack didn't flinch. "We've been monitoring your communications since you entered the solar system. Actually, correction, since you left Voraxian space 3 months ago." Thrax froze. "Impossible. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable." "Unbreakable?" Jack chuckled. "We broke it so thoroughly that we've been sending false confirmations to your fleet for the past week. Those weapons diagnostic reports showing all systems operational? We wrote those." A cold sensation spread through Thrax's exoskeleton. "You're bluffing. Your flagship's primary plasma cannon has a coolant leak in Section 47B. Your secondary targeting systems are calibrated 0.03 degrees off axis, enough to miss any planetary target by about 300 kilometers. Oh, and your personal shuttle has exactly 42.7% fuel remaining. Not the 58% your systems report." Jack ticked off each point on his fingers casually, as if reciting a grocery list. Thrax's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Voraxian equivalent of a jaw dropping. "How could you possibly?" "Also," Jack continued, taking another sip of coffee, "we neutralized your weapon systems about 6 hours ago. Your ships can still fly, but they couldn't toast a sandwich right now, let alone bombard a planet." One of the guards whispered urgently into a communication device, then looked up with horror. "Commander, he's telling the truth. Weapons are not responding ship-wide." Jack smiled apologetically. "Yeah, sorry about that. Standard procedure." Standard. Thrax struggled to process this information. "What do you mean, standard?" "You're hardly the first aggressive species to visit Earth, Commander. The Zlargans came by in what you'd call the 2130s big silicon-based fellows, very into world domination. Before them were the Krith Collective in the 2090s. Oh. And who could forget the Proxima Centauri incident of 2072? That was messy." Jack shook his head nostalgically. "You guys are actually the third this decade. We're becoming quite popular." Thrax stared at the human, his entire understanding of the universe crumbling around him. "That's not possible. Our stellar surveys show Earth has barely achieved spaceflight. Your most advanced vessels use chemical propulsion." Yes, that's what we wanted you to see, Jack said with a wink. We found it's better to appear harmless, attracts a more interesting class of visitor. But our intelligence is exactly what we fed to your intelligence gatherers, Jack finished for him. Those radio transmissions full of human conflict and primitive technology? Basically historical reenactments, broadcast specifically for species like yours who might be listening. A message alert chimed on Thrax's gauntlet. With trembling fingers, he activated it. The text was brief: weapons systems across fleet non-responsive. Unknown energy signature detected approaching from dark side of Earth moon. Jack glanced at his watch, right on schedule. Thrax's communication device erupted with panicked chatter. He activated the holographic display, and the image materialized above his gauntlet. Lieutenant Krell, his exoskeleton pale with stress. Commander. Unknown vessels, hundreds of them materializing around our fleet. They're everywhere, they just appeared out of nowhere. Krell's voice cracked as the transmission wavered. No warp signatures, no jump points, they're just there. The hologram expanded to show the Hegemony fleet now surrounded by sleek, midnight blue ships that seemed to shimmer slightly, as if not entirely present in normal space. They were smaller than the Hegemony warships, but more numerous, like wolves circling lumbering prey. Impossible, Thrax whispered. No cloaking technology can hide that many ships. Oh, we're not using cloaking technology, Jack said, peering at the hologram with mild interest. That's outdated. These ships exist partially in interphase space until needed. Technically, they're both here and not here simultaneously. Interphase space is theoretical. Thrax sputtered. No species has managed to. We cracked it in 2142, Jack interrupted with a casual wave. About 70 years after we achieved faster than light travel. Thrax's third heart nearly stopped. That would mean humans have been spacefaring since. Since before the founding of your hegemony. Yep. Jack grinned, pouring himself another coffee. Actually, we watched your civilization develop with great interest. Your early space pioneers showed such promise. But then came all that conquer the galaxy business, and, well, he made a dismissive gesture. The guard captain leaned toward Thrax, voice low but urgent. Sir, these vessels are scanning our ships with technology we cannot even identify. Our sensors can't penetrate their hulls. We have no tactical data. On the holographic display, one of the human ships performed an impossible maneuver, seeming to fold space around itself as it repositioned instantly between two hegemony cruisers. But Earth shows all markers of a pre-galactic civilization. Thrax protested, his worldview crumbling by the second. Primitive satellites, radio communications, internal conflicts. Jack laughed, that infuriating, casual laugh. All part of the show, Commander. Earth unified politically in 2037 after the climate wars. We keep up appearances to stay out of galactic politics. It's much more convenient to appear primitive. Convenient? Thrax echoed numbly. Absolutely. The real galactic community is a bureaucratic nightmare. Star councils, trade consortiums, diplomatic obligations. Jack rolled his eyes dramatically. We tried formal participation for about a century. Too many meetings, not enough exploration. So we officially withdrew from galactic society in 2356 and set up the primitive Earth facade. It works beautifully for keeping unwanted visitors away. Except for conquerors, Thrax observed bitterly. Well, yes, ambitious types like your hegemony occasionally stop by. We see it as an opportunity to assess potential threats without revealing our true capabilities. Jack shrugged. Most civilizations with conquest on their mind aren't particularly observant. They see what they expect to see, a vulnerable planet ripe for the taking. On the holographic display, Krell was becoming increasingly frantic. Commander, they've completely surrounded us. Our engines are now non-responsive too. We're being held in place somehow. Jack checked his watch again. Phase lock tethers. Standard procedure. Don't worry, they're completely harmless to your ships, unless you try to move, in which case the feedback would probably turn your engines into modern art installations. Thrax's posture changed. The imposing, predatory stance that had intimidated 1,000 diplomatic delegations gradually collapsed into something unfamiliar to Voraxian physiology defeat. His shoulder spikes retracted slightly, his 3 hearts beating in the arrhythmic pattern of distress. So this was a trap, Thrax said quietly. You lured the hegemony here. Not a trap, Jack corrected, setting down his coffee cup. More of a reality check. You were going to stumble across us eventually. Better now than after you've destabilized 3 more sectors with your expansion. Thrax's guards exchanged nervous glances, their claws twitching toward weapons they suddenly realized were useless. The full weight of their situation crashed down like a neutron star. They weren't the hunters. They were never the hunters. What happens now? Thrax asked, his voice hollow. Annihilation? Imprisonment? Will you make the mighty hegemony into a cautionary tale for the next ambitious conqueror? Jack actually laughed at this. Seriously? Do we look like comic book villains to you? We don't destroy civilizations, Commander. That's your specialty. He pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the remains of the shattered table. It projected a holographic document between them. These are our terms. Pretty straightforward. The hegemony withdraws from any territories annexed in the last 50 years, transitions to a non-military governance structure, and agrees to oversight from the Interstellar Ethical Development Council for the next century. You expect us to simply surrender our empire? Thrax's mandibles clicked in outrage. The hegemony has stood for 3 centuries. Our conquest is our legacy. And it can continue to stand, Jack said patiently, just without the conquest part. Look, we're not interested in ruling you or destroying you. We're interested in helping you grow up a little. Thrax bristled. Grow up? We have conquered 37. Yes, 37 species. Very impressive, Jack interrupted with a dismissive wave. My 10-year-old niece has more Pokémon. Collecting civilizations like trophies isn't a sign of advancement, Commander. It's a phase. Most species grow out of it. Pride and survival instinct warred visibly across Thrax's features. His entire identity, the very foundation of Voraxian culture, was built on domination. But with his fleet helpless and his weapons neutralized, pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. And if we refuse? Thrax asked, already knowing the answer. Then those ships currently surrounding your fleet will escort you back to Voraxian space, minus your weapons, faster than light capabilities, and with just enough fuel to limp home. Jack shrugged. We're not monsters, Thrax. We don't need to destroy you to stop you. The diplomatic implications were catastrophic. Returning home defeated, without a shot fired. The Hegemony Council would have his head mounted in the Hall of Failures. You know, Jack said conversationally, breaking the tense silence. I always wondered why in those old Earth movies, aliens traveled trillions of miles just to blow stuff up. Seems like a waste of fuel, right? If you've got the technology for interstellar travel, surely you've outgrown the whole invasion shtick. He gestured toward the terms again. This is your moment to break the cliché, Commander. Be the alien who came in peace after all. Thrax stared at the holographic terms for what seemed like an eternity. 3 centuries of hegemony dominance ended not with a glorious last stand but with bureaucratic paperwork. In all recorded Voraxian history, no commander had ever surrendered. There wasn't even a word for it in their language. The closest translation meant temporary strategic recalibration before inevitable victory. Yet here he was, about to invent a new concept for his people. I accept your terms, Thrax said finally, each word feeling like acid in his throat. On behalf of the Galactic Hegemony, I surrender. The human's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, Commander, this is the wisest decision any hegemony leader has ever made. It takes more courage to change course than to crash into a sun. With a resigned gesture, Thrax pressed his command insignia to the holographic document, formalizing the agreement. I assume human oversight will begin immediately. Already has, Jack replied, tapping something on his wrist device. Those ships surrounding your fleet? They're not just military vessels. They're carrying diplomatic, humanitarian, and cultural exchange personnel. By the time you reach Voraxian space, the transition will be well underway. Thrax's eyes narrowed. You were very confident I would accept. We've been watching the hegemony for decades, Commander. Your personal file suggested a 78% probability you'd choose survival over foolish martyrdom, higher than any other hegemony commander, actually. Jack smiled. That's why we waited until you were in charge of this incursion. You waited? Thrax's mandibles clicked in confusion. The hegemony has been on our observation list since your first interstellar expansion. We've monitored every conquest, every subjugation. We intervene when necessary, usually covertly. Jack gestured vaguely toward the stars. Earth's protectorate currently spans about 400 systems, most unknown to entities like your hegemony. 400. Thrax's voice trailed off as the scope of human influence dawned on him. The hegemony, with its 37 conquered worlds, had thought itself the dominant power in this galactic arm. Now he recognized it as a predator that had unknowingly been hunting in a zoo, watched by amused zookeepers. Don't look so devastated, Commander, Jack said, clapping him on what approximated a shoulder on Voraxian anatomy. This is actually a promotion. Your people are joining the galactic community. The real one, not the kindergarten version the hegemony has been playing in. As Thrax processed this final humiliation, Jack's communication device chimed. He checked it and stood up. Well, our business is concluded. Representatives will escort your ships home and begin the transition process. Jack extended his hand, a human gesture Thrax vaguely recognized as a peace ritual. Welcome to the big leagues, Commander. The adults' table is a lot more interesting than conquering planets, I promise. There's a whole universe out there that doesn't need to be subjugated to be appreciated. Thrax reluctantly extended his clawed appendage. And if we fail to honor these terms... Jack's smile remained friendly, but something in his eyes hardened just slightly. Then we'll have to have this conversation again. And trust me, Commander, you really don't want to see what happens when humans stop being polite. One standard galactic month later, Commander Thrax stood before the Hegemony High Council, the ceremonial hall of Conquest, now awkwardly repurposed as the Chamber of Interspecies Cooperation. The ancient trophies of war had been removed, replaced by bland diplomatic symbols and the insufferably cheerful Earth Protectorate emblem. You failed to conquer one primitive world, High Counselor Thrax accused, and instead brought this humiliation upon us. Thrax had expected execution. Instead, he found himself explaining the unexplainable. They were never primitive, he said quietly. That was the perfect deception. Humans have mastered the art of appearing harmless until threatened. Their technology, their influence, it spans hundreds of systems, not just Earth. And you believed these claims? Another counselor scoffed. I watched their ships materialize from dimensional space we cannot even detect, Thrax replied. I saw our fleet, our invincible fleet, rendered helpless without a single shot fired. Yes, I believed them. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans have been watching us for longer than we've known of their existence, Thrax continued. They could have destroyed us at any time. Instead, they offered guidance. A younger counselor leaned forward. What I don't understand is why their representatives showed no fear. Even species with superior weaponry display survival instinct when threatened. Thrax's mandibles clicked in what his species had recently learned was called ironic amusement, a concept borrowed from human culture. "That was my revelation as well," he said. "The human wasn't scared because he never had reason to be. We were never a threat to them, merely an opportunity for them to correct what they saw as our species' misdirection." As the council debated their new reality, Thrax gazed out at the stars, the same stars the hegemony had once planned to dominate, now revealed to be under the watchful guardianship of beings who had mastered the art of understated power. "Remember this," Thrax said finally, interrupting the council's bickering. "We conquered 37 worlds through fear and force. The humans oversee hundreds through choice and cooperation. The most dangerous species in the galaxy are not those with the largest weapons or the most aggressive tactics." He turned to face the council, his three hearts now beating in the calm, unified rhythm of certainty. "The most dangerous species are those who smile in the face of threats, because their confidence comes not from what you can see, but from what you cannot.